Tartarus Prime was a world shrouded in eternal night, its surface scarred by eons of cosmic battles and natural cataclysms. The planet's skies were thick with toxic clouds, swirling in shades of black and deep purple, blotting out any trace of the stars above. The air was dense with sulfur and the acrid scent of decay, a fitting atmosphere for a world long abandoned by any intelligent life. But deep within the bowels of this desolate planet, hidden away from the prying eyes of the universe, something ancient stirred in agony. Vornath, the last of the Dracos, lay coiled within a vast cavern, his enormous body stretched across the rocky floor. His once glorious scales, once vibrant with hues of red and gold, were now dull and cracked, their brilliance faded by the passage of time and the burden of countless battles. His wings, which had once darkened the skies with their immense span, lay limp and tattered, the membranes torn and frayed. The cavern was filled with the low, rhythmic sound of his labored breathing, each exhale a rasping wheeze that echoed off the stone walls. The fires that had once burned brightly within his eyes were now reduced to a dim flicker, their light barely penetrating the darkness that surrounded him. Vornath was dying, and he knew it. For millennia, the Dracos had been the most feared creatures in the galaxy, their very name invoking terror in the hearts of all who heard it. These titanic beings were said to be born from the cores of stars, their bodies infused with the energy of supernovae. Their roars could shake planets, their claws could rend through the strongest alloys, and their fiery breath could incinerate entire fleets. They were gods of destruction, unstoppable forces of nature that had once ruled entire sectors of space. But with great power came great fear. The Dracos were hunted by every sentient race, each one seeking to either harness their power or eliminate the threat they posed. Galactic coalitions were formed with the sole purpose of eradicating the Dracos, leading to centuries of brutal warfare. Despite their might, the Dracos were eventually driven to the brink of extinction, their numbers dwindling until only one remained, Vornath. Now the mighty creature lay dying in his self-imposed exile, hidden away in the deepest recesses of Tartarus Prime. He had lived longer than any of his kin, outlasted every hunter, every enemy. But time, the one enemy that no being could defeat, was catching up to him. His body, once a paragon of strength and resilience, was failing. A mysterious illness had taken root deep within him, sapping his energy and poisoning his blood. His once mighty heart struggled with each beat, and his mind, once sharp and clear, was clouded with pain and exhaustion. Vornath had always believed that he would meet his end in battle, as was fitting for a creature of his power. But now, as he lay alone in the darkness, he realized that death would come not with a roar, but with a whimper. It was a fate he could not accept. In a final act of desperation, Vornath reached out with his mind, casting his thoughts into the void of space. His species had been blessed with a form of telepathy, a mental connection that allowed them to communicate across vast distances. But this ability had always been used to coordinate attacks, to command armies, to instill fear. Now, for the first time, Vornath used it to plead for help. His mental cry echoed across the cosmos, a haunting call filled with pain and fear, but also a flicker of hope. It was a cry that could only be heard by those with a special gift, those who possessed the ability to understand the thoughts and emotions of creatures, no matter how alien. Vornath's call traveled through the void, bypassing stars and planets, reaching far beyond the borders of known space. On a distant planet, light years away from Tartarus Prime, the call was heard. Dr. Eleanor Riggs was in her small veterinary clinic on Earth, tending to a stray dog with a wounded leg. It was late, and the world outside was quiet, the night sky clear and filled with stars. As she cleaned the dog's wound, a sudden, overwhelming sense of despair washed over her, nearly causing her to drop the syringe she was holding. She froze, her heart pounding, as images and emotions not her own flooded her mind. A vast, dark cavern, a creature of unimaginable size and power, racked with pain, the crushing weight of loneliness, and above all, a desperate plea for help. Eleanor gasped, her breath coming in short, rapid bursts. She had always known she was different. From a young age, she had been able to sense the emotions of animals, to understand them in ways that others could not. It was what had driven her to become a veterinarian, to dedicate her life to healing and caring for creatures that couldn't speak for themselves. But this was something entirely different. She saw the creature clearly in her mind, a monstrous being that could only be described as a dragon from the old Earth myths. But this was no myth. The emotions she felt were too real, the images too vivid. She could feel the creature's pain, its fear, its desperation, and she knew, without a doubt, that it was dying. The call lasted only a few moments, but it left Eleanor shaken to her core. She sat down heavily on a nearby stool, her mind racing. What she had experienced was impossible, at least by any rational explanation. But Eleanor had long since learned that the universe was far stranger and more wondrous than most people realized. As the images began to fade, she was left with a single, undeniable truth. Somewhere out there, across the vast expanse of space, a creature was dying, and it was calling out to her for help. Dr. Eleanor Riggs sat in her modest clinic, the fluorescent lights flickering above her as she tried to steady her shaking hands. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the room, but her mind was far from the familiar comfort of her small veterinary practice. The vivid, otherworldly images that had invaded her thoughts just minutes before replayed in her mind, leaving her bewildered and deeply unsettled. Eleanor had always known she was different. Her ability to connect with animals on a level that went beyond mere intuition was something she had come to accept over the years. She could feel their pain, sense their emotions, and often knew what they needed even before a physical examination confirmed it. It was a gift that had served her well, making her one of the most sought-after veterinarians in her region. But this was something else entirely. Never before had she experienced a connection so intense, so alien. She glanced around the clinic, her eyes falling on the various animal posters and charts that lined the walls. This place, her life's work, suddenly felt so small, so insignificant compared to the vastness of what she had just glimpsed. The creature in her vision, no, not just a vision, a real living being, was unlike anything she had ever encountered or even imagined. It was a dragon, a creature of legend, yet its existence was as real as the stray dog that lay resting on the examination table beside her. As she tried to process what had happened, the stray dog whimpered softly, snapping Eleanor out of her daze. She forced herself to focus, finishing the bandaging of the dog's leg with practiced precision. But even as she worked, her mind kept drifting back to the creature she had seen. The overwhelming sense of despair and loneliness that had accompanied the vision was impossible to ignore. Eleanor finished her work and gently stroked the dog's head, offering it a reassuring smile. "You'll be all right, buddy," she whispered, though her thoughts were elsewhere. She watched as the dog was picked up by a local animal rescue worker who had brought it in, her mind still grappling with the impossible experience she had just had. The clinic door closed behind them, leaving Eleanor alone with her thoughts. She knew she couldn't ignore what had happened. But what could she do? This was beyond her understanding, beyond anything she had ever encountered in her life. How could a simple vet from Earth possibly help a creature that existed light years away, on a planet she had never even heard of? That night, Eleanor sat at her desk, the soft hum of her computer the only sound in the quiet clinic. She began researching, typing furiously into search engines and combing through obscure databases that she had never had reason to explore before. She searched for any mention of dragons, telepathic communication, and the mysterious planet that the creature had shown her, Tartarus Prime. What she found was both fascinating and terrifying. Tartarus Prime was a planet spoken of only in hushed tones in the most esoteric corners of the internet, a world so inhospitable that even the most advanced civilizations had deemed it unworthy of exploration. It was said to be a place of death, a graveyard of ancient beings and forgotten wars. And the creature she had seen, the Dracos, was a name she found in ancient myths and legends, referred to as the most powerful and feared species in the galaxy. As she dug deeper, she stumbled upon references to a secretive organization known as the Cosmic Alliance. According to the scant information available, the Alliance was dedicated to the protection of endangered species across the universe, intervening only in the most extreme cases where a species faced extinction. They operated in the shadows, their existence known to only a few, and they were rumored to possess advanced technology and knowledge far beyond what was publicly available. Eleanor hesitated, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Contacting such an organization seemed absurd, but what other choice did she have? The images of the dying Dracos haunted her, and the memory of its plea for help weighed heavily on her heart. Taking a deep breath, she decided to take the risk. She composed a carefully worded message, detailing what she had experienced, and sent it to the most likely contact she could find, an encrypted email address buried deep in a forum dedicated to interstellar wildlife preservation. Hours passed, and Eleanor's exhaustion finally caught up with her. She fell asleep at her desk, her dreams filled with images of vast alien landscapes and the haunting eyes of the Dracos. She awoke to the soft chime of an incoming message. Blinking away sleep, she quickly opened the email. To her astonishment, the message was from the Cosmic Alliance. The response was brief but urgent. Dr. Eleanor Riggs, we have received your message and verified the authenticity of your experience. The creature you describe is indeed the last of its kind, a being of great significance. If what you have experienced is true, you may be the only hope it has left. A transport will arrive at your location within the hour. Please be prepared for departure. Time is of the essence. The Cosmic Alliance. Eleanor's heart raced as she reread the message. This was really happening. She had only an hour to prepare, and she had no idea what to expect. But she knew she couldn't turn back now. Whatever lay ahead, she had to try and save the creature that had reached out to her, no matter the risks. Frantically, she began gathering supplies. She packed her most essential medical equipment, unsure of what she would need to treat a creature so vastly different from anything on Earth. She grabbed a few personal items, a photo of her late parents, a notebook she had kept since childhood, and her favorite stethoscope, before stepping outside into the cool night air. The stars above seemed brighter than usual, almost as if they were watching her. She looked up, feeling both small and significant in that moment. She was about to embark on a journey that would take her far beyond the confines of her quiet life on Earth, into the unknown reaches of the galaxy. Right on cue, a low hum filled the air, and a sleek silver craft descended silently from the sky, hovering just above the ground in front of her. The craft's door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a small, brightly lit interior. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor stepped forward, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. She was just a vet from Earth, but she was about to embark on a mission that could change the fate of an entire species. As she boarded the craft, the door closed behind her, sealing her into a new world of possibilities. The craft lifted off, and with a sudden burst of speed, shot up into the night sky, leaving Earth far behind. Eleanor sat back in her seat, gripping her medical bag tightly, her mind racing with thoughts of what awaited her on Tartarus Prime. She had no idea what she would find when she arrived, or if she would even be able to help the creature that had called out to her. But she knew one thing for certain: she had to try. The journey to Tartarus Prime was unlike anything Eleanor Riggs had ever experienced. The craft, a marvel of alien engineering, slipped through the fabric of space with ease, traveling faster than light. Its interior was sleek and minimalist, with soft ambient lighting and a few seats arranged around a central console. Eleanor sat in one of these seats, her heart still racing from the whirlwind of events that had brought her here. The craft's pilot, a humanoid figure with smooth metallic skin and glowing blue eyes, introduced itself as Chiron. Chiron was a member of the Cosmic Alliance, an advanced AI designed to navigate the complexities of the universe and assist with the most delicate missions. Despite its robotic appearance, Chiron's voice was warm and reassuring, a deliberate choice by its creators to put passengers at ease. "We will reach Tartarus Prime shortly, Dr. Riggs," Chiron informed her, as the craft hummed quietly around them. "The planet's atmosphere is hostile, but our ship is equipped to handle it. Once we arrive, we will need to act quickly. The Dracos is in critical condition and time is not on our side." Eleanor nodded, her mind focused on the task ahead. What can you tell me about the Dracos? What exactly am I dealing with? Karen's eyes flickered as it accessed its vast database. The Dracos are an ancient species, one of the oldest known in the galaxy. They were once revered as guardians of balance, beings of immense power and wisdom. However, over time, their strength made them targets. They were hunted to near extinction, their abilities feared by many civilizations. The creature you are about to meet, Vornath, is the last of its kind. Eleanor listened intently, absorbing every detail. And this illness? Do you know what's causing it? Chiron hesitated, a rare pause for an AI. We have limited data. The Dracos are biologically complex, with regenerative abilities that should prevent most forms of disease. However, it appears that Vornath has been afflicted by a rare combination of factors: old age, wounds from past battles that never fully healed, and a slow-acting poison that we believe was introduced by one of his enemies long ago. The poison has weakened his immune system, allowing infections to take root. Eleanor frowned, her mind racing through possible treatments. Do we have the necessary medicines on board? I brought everything I could think of, but this is beyond anything I've ever dealt with. We have synthesized several compounds that may help, Kieran replied, but it will be up to you to determine the best course of action. Your ability to connect with the creature may provide insights that our data cannot. Eleanor took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She had always prided herself on her ability to stay calm under pressure. But this was different. The stakes were higher than they had ever been before, and the responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders. The craft began its descent, and the atmosphere outside grew dark and turbulent. Tartarus Prime loomed below, a planet of jagged peaks and deep valleys, its surface scarred by ancient volcanic activity. The air was thick with sulfuric clouds, and violent storms raged across the landscape. It was a world that seemed to resist life itself. As the craft approached the surface, Eleanor caught her first glimpse of the cavern where Vornath was hidden. The entrance was a massive, yawning chasm in the side of a towering black mountain, surrounded by jagged rocks and rivers of molten lava. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a fitting home for a creature of such legendary power. Chiron guided the craft to a smooth landing just outside the cavern entrance. The door slid open, and a rush of hot, acrid air filled the cabin. Eleanor adjusted her breathing mask, feeling the weight of the oppressive atmosphere pressing down on her. Be careful, Dr. Riggs, Chiron warned as she stepped out onto the rocky surface. The environment is harsh, and the cavern is unstable. Follow my lead, and we'll reach Vornath quickly. Eleanor nodded, gripping her medical bag tightly as she followed Chiron into the darkness. The cavern was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, with only the occasional glint of glowing minerals providing faint illumination. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur and decay, and the ground was uneven, littered with sharp rocks and pools of toxic liquid. As they ventured deeper, Eleanor began to feel the presence of Vornath more strongly. It was as if the very air was charged with his energy, a pulsing, living force that filled the cavern. The closer they got, the more she could sense his pain, his fear, and his overwhelming fatigue. Finally, they rounded a corner, and there he was. Vornath, the last Dracos. The sight took Eleanor's breath away. Vornath was colossal, his body stretching across the cavern floor like a living mountain. His scales, once bright and vibrant, were cracked and dull, their color drained by the passage of time and the poison that coursed through his veins. His wings, once majestic and powerful, lay crumpled at his sides, the membranes torn and withered. But it was his eyes that struck Eleanor the most. Those enormous, fiery eyes, now dimmed with pain, locked onto her the moment she entered the chamber. Despite the creature's weakened state, his gaze held a fierce intelligence and a deep, ancient wisdom that sent a shiver down her spine. Eleanor approached slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel Vornath's mind brushing against hers, a tentative, almost desperate connection that spoke of his suffering and his hope. Vornath, she whispered, unsure if he could understand her words. I'm here to help you. I'm going to do everything I can to save you. A low rumble emanated from the Dracos, a sound that vibrated through the ground and resonated in Eleanor's bones. It wasn't a growl of aggression, but a sound of acknowledgement, perhaps even gratitude. Eleanor knelt beside the massive creature, opening her medical bag and pulling out the tools and medicines she had brought. Chiron stood nearby, ready to assist, but it was clear that this would be Eleanor's task. She was the only one who could bridge the gap between human and Dracos, the only one who could truly understand what Vornath needed. She began with a thorough examination, moving carefully over Vornath's immense body. His scales were thick and tough, but she found areas where they had cracked and peeled away, exposing raw, infected tissue beneath. She cleaned these wounds as best she could, applying antiseptics and bandages, though she knew it was only a temporary solution. Next, she turned her attention to the poison that had ravaged his system. Using the tools provided by the Cosmic Alliance, she was able to extract samples of Vornath's blood and analyze it for toxins. The results confirmed what Chiron had told her. The poison was a rare and deadly compound designed to slowly degrade the creature's regenerative abilities and weaken his defenses over time. Eleanor administered the synthesized antidote, a potent mixture designed to counteract the poison and stimulate Vornath's immune system. She could only hope that it would be enough, that his body would respond in time. But as she worked, she realized that Vornath's condition was more than just physical. She could feel it in his mind, a deep, pervasive despair that had taken hold of him, sapping his will to live. The loneliness, the loss of his kin, and the endless years of being hunted had worn him down in ways that medicine alone could not heal. Eleanor knew she had to reach him on a deeper level. She had to find a way to restore his hope, to remind him that there was something worth fighting for. Closing her eyes, she focused her thoughts, reaching out to Vornath with her mind. She sent him images of life, of the creatures she had healed, of the beauty of Earth's forests and oceans. She shared with him her own experiences, her own struggles with loneliness and loss, and the moments of connection and joy that had kept her going. At first, she felt resistance, a wall of pain and mistrust. But slowly, as she continued to share her thoughts and feelings, she sensed a change. The barrier began to crumble, and she felt Vornath's mind open to hers, tentatively accepting the connection. Images began to flow back to her, memories of Vornath's life, of battles fought and lost, of the vast, star-filled skies he had once soared through with his kin. She saw the Dracos as they had once been, proud and powerful, guardians of a balance that had been shattered long ago. She felt his pain, his grief, and the crushing weight of his loneliness. But beneath it all, she sensed a spark of something else, something that had been buried deep within him, a desire to live, to survive, to find a new purpose. Eleanor focused on that spark, nurturing it with her own strength, her own hope. She sent Vornath the image of them leaving this desolate world together, of him finding a new life, a new purpose, as a guardian not of destruction, but of life. For a moment, the connection between them grew so strong that Eleanor could hardly distinguish her own thoughts from Vornath's. She felt his heartbeat echo in her chest, his breath fill her lungs. And then, slowly, she felt a response, a faint but unmistakable surge of strength as Vornath's body began to fight back against the poison and the infection. She opened her eyes, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Vornath's gaze was still fixed on her, but there was something new in those ancient eyes, determination. The antidote had taken hold, and the infection was beginning to recede. But the real battle was just beginning. Eleanor knew it would take time, patience, and continued care to fully heal Vornath, both physically and emotionally. But for the first time, she believed it was possible. She stayed by Vornath's side, monitoring his condition, administering treatments, and continuing their mental connection. Hours turned into days, and slowly Vornath's strength began to return. His wounds started to heal, his scales regaining some of their lost luster. The light in his eyes grew brighter, and his breathing became steadier, more powerful. The scientists who had come with them marveled at the progress, but they were also wary. Vornath was still the most feared creature in the universe, and they were uncertain of what would happen once he regained his full strength. But Eleanor knew that Vornath had changed. The bond they had formed was real, and it had transformed them both. As the days passed, Eleanor found herself thinking less of Earth, of the life she had left behind, and more of what lay ahead. She had embarked on this journey to save a creature, but in doing so, she had found something more, a connection that spanned the boundaries of species and space, a purpose that transcended the small world she had known. She didn't know what the future held, but as she looked into Vornath's eyes, she felt a sense of peace, a certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. And so, with Vornath slowly regaining his strength, Eleanor prepared for the next stage of their journey, one that would take them far beyond the desolate caverns of Tartarus Prime into the heart of a universe filled with both danger and wonder. The days on Tartarus Prime passed in a blur of medical treatments, mental connections, and quiet moments shared between Dr. Eleanor Riggs and Vornath, the last of the Dracos. The once desolate cavern, filled with the echoes of despair and the stench of decay, began to change. The air, though still thick and oppressive, felt less heavy with each passing day, as if the planet itself was responding to the revival of its most ancient inhabitant. Eleanor had never imagined she would find herself here, on a distant world, tending to a creature of legend. Yet, as she sat beside Vornath, watching the slow but steady rise and fall of his immense chest, she felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she had known before. The connection she had forged with the Dracos was more than just a link between a vet and her patient. It was a bond that transcended the boundaries of species and language, a bridge between two beings who had each faced their own battles with loneliness and loss. Vornath's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. The antidote had neutralized the poison that had been slowly killing him, and the infections that had ravaged his body were now under control. His scales, once dull and cracked, began to shimmer faintly with their former brilliance. His wings, though still fragile, were slowly mending, the torn membranes knitting back together under Eleanor's careful care. But more than the physical healing, it was the change in Vornath's spirit that was most profound. The despair that had once clouded his mind had lifted, replaced by a growing determination to live, to survive, and to find a new purpose. Eleanor could feel it every time their minds connected, a burgeoning hope that had been sparked by their shared experiences. As the final stages of Vornath's recovery approached, the scientists who had accompanied Eleanor began to prepare for their departure. They had gathered extensive data on the Dracos, capturing every moment of his recovery with a mixture of awe and apprehension. For them, this was a historic moment, a chance to study a creature that had been thought extinct, to witness the revival of a being of immense power. But for Eleanor, it was something much more personal. She had spent every waking hour with Vornath, tending to his wounds, administering treatments, and simply sitting by his side, sharing her thoughts and emotions with him. In return, Vornath had opened up to her in ways she never could have imagined. Through their mental bond, she had seen the universe through his eyes, experienced the memories of his ancient life, and felt the weight of his loneliness. The day of their departure arrived, and the cavern was filled with a quiet tension. Vornath, now strong enough to stand, rose to his full height, his massive form casting a long shadow over the rocky floor. His eyes, once dimmed with pain, now glowed with a fierce inner light. He was not yet at full strength, but the transformation was undeniable. The Dracos, the universe's most feared creature, had been given a second chance. Eleanor stood before him, feeling small and insignificant in his presence, yet also filled with a deep sense of connection and pride. She had saved him, but in many ways, he had saved her too. He had shown her that there was more to life than the confines of her small veterinary clinic on Earth, that there was a vast universe out there filled with beings who needed her help. "Vornath," she said softly, reaching out with her mind as much as with her voice, "you're strong enough to leave this place now, but you don't have to do it alone." Vornath lowered his head, his massive, fiery eyes locking onto hers. The bond between them pulsed with a warm, comforting energy, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. Eleanor felt his thoughts brush against hers, a wordless communication filled with gratitude, respect, and something deeper, an understanding that they were bound together by more than just circumstance. Chiron, the AI who had piloted their craft to Tartarus Prime, approached Eleanor with a quiet hum. "Dr. Riggs, the craft is ready for departure. The Cosmic Alliance has requested an update on Vornath's condition and your plans." Eleanor turned to Chiron, her mind racing with the possibilities. She knew that she couldn't simply return to Earth and leave Vornath to fend for himself. He was still vulnerable, still in need of care, and more than that, she couldn't bear the thought of abandoning the bond they had formed. "I'm not going back to Earth," she said, the decision solidifying in her mind as she spoke. "Not yet, at least. Vornath and I—" She paused, glancing back at the towering creature. "We have more to do. He's the last of his kind, and he deserves a chance to find a new purpose, to live without fear." Chiron's eyes flickered, processing her words. "The Cosmic Alliance would likely support your decision, Dr. Riggs. Vornath's survival is of great interest to them, and they may be able to assist in finding a suitable habitat for him, or even a new role within the galaxy. However, it will not be without risks. There are still those who would see the Dracos destroyed." Eleanor nodded, fully aware of the dangers. "I understand, but Vornath has lived in fear and isolation for far too long. It's time for that to change, and I'll be there to help him." Vornath, sensing her resolve, let out a low rumble that resonated through the cavern. It was a sound of agreement, of readiness. He was no longer the dying creature she had first encountered. He was a being reborn, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey back to the surface was slow and careful. Vornath, still adjusting to his renewed strength, moved with a cautious grace, his wings unfurling slightly as they neared the cavern entrance. The toxic air of Tartarus Prime swirled around them, but Eleanor felt no fear. She was no longer the small-town vet she had been when she first arrived on this desolate world. She was now something more, a healer, a protector, and a friend to one of the most powerful creatures in the universe. As they emerged into the harsh light of Tartarus Prime's surface, Eleanor took one last look at the planet that had been Vornath's prison for so long. The black mountains, the rivers of molten lava, the sulfurous clouds. It was a world of death, but also a world of rebirth. Here, in this inhospitable place, a new chapter in Vornath's life had begun, and she was honored to be a part of it. The craft awaited them, its sleek form glinting in the dim light. Chiron led the way, guiding Vornath and Eleanor aboard. As the door sealed shut behind them, Eleanor felt a sense of finality, but also anticipation. The galaxy awaited them, with all its dangers and wonders. As the craft lifted off, Eleanor took a seat near the viewport, watching as Tartarus Prime receded into the distance. Vornath settled beside her, his massive form curled protectively around her seat. Through their bond, she could feel his thoughts, curiosity, determination, and a quiet hope that had not been there before. "What now?" she asked, more to herself than to anyone else. Chiron's voice answered, calm and measured. "Now, Dr. Riggs, we chart a course to a new destination. The Cosmic Alliance has suggested several locations where Vornath might thrive, places where his presence could bring balance rather than fear. But ultimately, the choice is yours, and his." Eleanor smiled, feeling a surge of excitement. The future was uncertain, filled with risks and challenges, but it was also wide open with possibilities. Vornath, the universe's most feared creature, was no longer alone, and neither was she. "Let's find a place where he can live freely," she said, glancing at Vornath. "A place where he can be more than just a legend, more than just a survivor." Vornath's eyes glowed brighter, his thoughts resonating with hers. Together, they would forge a new path, one that would take them far beyond the desolate caves of Tartarus Prime, into the heart of a universe filled with life, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. And as the stars stretched out before them, Eleanor knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The vet and the dragon, an unlikely pair bound by fate, ready to take on the galaxy one step at a time.